Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we're travelling deep into the green inferno and trying to avoid a cannibal apocalypse as we take a look at Let's Do Lunch. Let's Do Lunch was released by Hasbro in the year 2000 and is an abstract strategy game for 2 players aged 12 and up. It was designed by Tom Krasowski and Steve Wise, and is essentially just a reskinned version of their Dungeons & Dragons Dragonlance themed game Magestones, which was released 10 years earlier in 1990. As I said, this is essentially an abstract strategy game with a theme plastered on top of it, and pretty much any theme would work with this style of game. However, here they've gone for a cannibalism theme. Now I have to say, cannibalism does appeal to the horror fan in me, but it is one which board game manufacturers generally stay clear of, because there is a definite potential for racial insensitivity or offensive depictions of indigenous peoples. Now Hasbro has tried to stay away from that by not using an African or American tribal theme to this, but has instead gone for cavemen. And they've taken great pains to make sure that the characters on the front cover here have got a Caucasian white skin tone. Now, does that get away from potential problems? I'll let you decide that one. I have to say, straight away from the front of the box, there's 2 things here which don't really appeal to me, even though cannibalism does as a theme. The name and the picture. The name, Let's Do Lunch, is just exceptionally bland, and it doesn't really speak of the theme of cannibalism much at all. They could have gone for pretty much anything which has a cannibal pun to it, and it would make this much more catchy and appealing to the audience that they're going for. Let's have him for dinner. Finger food. Finger licking good. Eat your heart out. Cannibal clans. Tasty tribes. Edible enemies. Palatable people. Nourishing, nutritious natives. It just seems to me that the naming of this game has been a bit of a rush job, and they've not really put too much thought into it. Now, I'm normally a big fan of drawn or painted box artwork, but to me, this kind of looks like it's been rendered in 3D by a computer. I'm talking about the kind of thing that you might see on the front cover of a 90s PC game that you find at the bottom of a clearance bin in a petrol station. With a cannibal theme and tribes trying to eat each other, there was so much potential for some really gorgeous artwork. I think they've missed it. The back of the box here shows, well, it doesn't tell us very much about the game, but it's got a huge photograph of 2 people playing the game, and unless I'm very much mistaken, they seem to have completely misjudged their audience from the people who are actually playing this game in the photo. Because this setup looks like it's been set up for a nice romantic dinner with a fireplace and some candles, and they're smiley and happy. Just doesn't really seem to go with this. Is this a good game though? Well, I think we should take a closer look and find out. The game comes with 3 6-sided dice. Each one of them has 2 sides which feature a 1, 2 sides which feature a 2, and 2 sides which feature a 3. The box comes with this really rather nice black plastic vac-formed insert. It doesn't really do anything, but it does give a lot more visual appeal. As I say, you don't really use it in the game, but having said that, it does make a rather nice dice tray. We've got 24 playing pieces representing our 2 different tribes. We've got 12 beige or white playing pieces here representing the Bonehead tribe, and 12 maroon or brown playing pieces representing the Bloodboilers tribe. You can see here that there's 3 of each character in a tribe, and that both tribes have got the exact same characters. There was actually no need to sculpt them looking differently at all, but it really adds to this game, and in fact is probably the biggest selling point for this game. They've really tried to exaggerate features in order to give them this very cartoonish look, and to be honest, as I said, the sculpt on these
is pretty good and is the main selling point of this game, really. This is probably the most innocuous looking cannibal here. She has got this big club, but there's nothing really else to say that she is going to be trying to eat people. Whereas this guy here, with this big skull on the end of his spear, is quite definitely a man-eater. He's got very sharp teeth here and a big ring through his nose, as well as what is probably feathers on top of his head. Again, it's quite a nice little cartoony sculpt. And we've got our female here with a big spoon in her hand, and if you look at the back here, there is a cooking pot which has got a foot sticking out of it, so you can tell that she is a cannibal and going to be eating people. Again, she's got this kind of ring through her nose, a little bit of stereotyping there. And we've got our male here, very old male in this cannibal tribe. You can see there is a skull down by his feet here, down here. He's holding, I think, a leaf in his hand at the back here, and he's got a big club with a spike through it. These remind me quite a lot of the Gogs. And finally, we've got the game board, which is this nice, really thick, sturdy card that it's made from. So this is good quality. You can see there is no fold in here at all. So it is just this size. It comes out of the box without having to unfold. So it is quite small, but it is the size that it needs to be. And it's got some interesting artwork on here without being too cluttered, which detracts from gameplay. The object of the game then is to be the first player to get all 12 of their cannibals onto the board here. But of course, because there are cannibals in this game, they can get eaten. And if they're eaten, they're taken off of the board, back into your pile, and you're going to have to play longer before you get them all out. So the first player takes the 3 dice, rolls them, adds up those numbers, 2, 1 and 1 is 4, and that tells them which column they're going to place their cannibals in on the board. So rolling a total of 4, I'm going to take any one of the cannibals in my tribe and put them into column number 4 here, wherever I want. My opponent is then going to take the dice, roll them and add up their score. 2, 1 and 1 is 4 again. And with a 4, they're going to take one of their cannibals and place it anywhere in column 4, probably next to one of your cannibals, so that they can set them up for eating them later in the game. Play then continues like this, with each player rolling the dice and adding more and more cannibals onto the board. But what you're wanting to do is get some of your opponent's pieces off of the board by eating them, because these are cannibals and they eat each other. In order to do that, you need to have a cannibal on either side of the square that they are on. So if on my turn I rolled a 7, I could place a cannibal anywhere in column number 7 here. So if I placed one here on this side, so that I have got 2 cannibals here, they don't need to be of the same type, then this white cannibal that is between the 2 of them, they are going to get eaten, removed and given back to the white player. You can trap and eat opponent's cannibals in any direction, not just in columns. You can also do it in rows. So this cannibal would get eaten because he has one on either side here. And if you roll a column you need, you can sandwich and eat cannibals diagonally as well. Getting a cannibal into the number 6 river column here has the added benefit that a cannibal in the river can never be trapped and eaten, even if there's ones on either side of it, but they can trap and eat other cannibals that are on the shore. And it's not just one cannibal at a time you can eat. If you position one of your cannibals in the correct place, you can eat multiple cannibals in one go. So these 2 would both get eaten because they're between these 2 white cannibals, and this cannibal here would also get eaten because she's between these 2. And that's not all, because you can also wrap vertically around the board. So if I rolled a number 4 and placed one of my cannibals here, although they can't get anybody this way, they can wrap around the board here back to this one. So between these 2, this cannibal and this cannibal could get eaten because they're going to wrap vertically around like this. But remember, it's not as simple as just placing cannibals wherever you want on the board. You have to roll for the columns to see where you're going to put them. And there's a couple of rules about the numbers that you roll. Most of the time you're going to roll 2 of one number and 1 of another, and in that case you're going to add up that number and put your cannibal into that column, and that's what's going to happen during most of the game. However, if you roll a 1, a 2 and a 3, then you essentially miss a go. You don't get to put down a cannibal. And remember, 1, 2 and 3 adds up to 6, which is the river space. So it's actually quite hard to get into the river column. If you roll 3 of a kind, then you get to add them together, put your cannibal into the appropriate column, so in this case column number 3, and then you get to have another go rolling, and if you get any more sets of 3, then those are also rewarded by another turn. If in the game you roll a column which is already full, like column number 4 here, it means that unfortunately you don't get to put anything down and it just passes over to the opponent. But eventually one player is going to put down all of their cannibals, and once all 12 are down onto the board, then that player wins the game.
I love simple abstract strategy games, and I love the theme of horror and monsters and people and things eating each other, so cannibalism does appeal to me. So this should be pretty much an automatic win. But the gameplay really does let this down for me. Now there's obviously a lot of random elements being introduced with the rolling of 3 dice, but I'm not against using dice and randomness. If you've seen any of my other reviews, I actually quite like that, in moderation and in the right place. There is admittedly something quite fun and relaxing about this game with the rolling the dice and the constant dice chucking. But if you're looking for a game like that, I would most definitely recommend Dungeon Dice, this one here, instead, because that has got a lot more dice to it and it just works better as a game. I also love the game Othello, where you're taking your counters and you're trying to trap your opponent's pieces by placing them either side, and that in Othello turns them onto your team, whereas in this you're eliminating them from the game, so that should be a plus point. But with this, the dice throwing is what's determining where you're putting your pieces, and with the dice and the numbered columns, it just doesn't really work in this game. And to find out why, we have to take a look at this in much more detail and think about statistics. So the game board is split into 7 columns numbered 3 to 9, which we can represent like this. Now remember, we're only working with 3 dice where each one only goes as high as 3. So in order to get a cannibal into column number 3, we're going to have to roll a 1 on each of the dice. In order to put a cannibal into column 4, we're going to have to roll 2 1s and a 2. Because we've got 3 dice, there's 3 possible combinations to get this result. To place a cannibal in column 5, we need 2 1s and a 3, or a 1 and 2 2s. To roll for column 6, we need a 1, a 2 and a 3, of which there are 6 combinations. Or we can roll 3 2s. For column 7, we need a 1 and 2 3s, or 2 2s and a 3. For column 8, we need a 2 and 2 3s, and for column 9, we need 3 3s. So you can see here that statistically column 6 is most likely to be rolled with our 3 dice. However, remember that if you roll a 1, a 2 and a 3, then you don't get to put down a cannibal, and in fact you miss a go. Which means that all the combinations of 1, 2 and 3 are no good to us. You can only actually put a cannibal in column 6 with a roll of a 2, 2, 2. So you can see from this dice table that the likelihood of getting into each of the different columns is very uneven. It's very rare that you're going to get into column 3, 6 or 9, and in fact you're 3 times more likely to end up in column 4 or 8 and 6 times more likely to end up in column 5 or 7. And that is basically how pretty much every game of this goes, with players only really placing their pieces in columns 5 and 7, which quickly become crowded and not much else of the board is used. The element of strategy and tactics is greatly reduced, and it's just really not that enjoyable a game. I'm really not quite sure how you would improve it. without completely getting rid of the dice rolls and the numbered columns, which is essentially what the game is all about. Unless you were to completely get rid of the six-sided dice and replace them with, say, a D10 or a D8, and then use that as a way of forcing players into particular columns. At least that way there would be an even chance of you getting any one of them. But again, would that then be a good game? I'm not sure. It's a shame. This has got a lot of potential, or at least the theming does. And I really would like to see more cannibal themed games out there. But what do you think? Is it an appealing theme, or is it one that the manufacturers are right to avoid? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Well, I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen here today. If you have, please remember to comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time with more vintage board games on Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.